Alright, okay everyone, it's my first video back after a while. September has been a really long month for me, so I don't think you'll begrudge me a little beer, a small beer, just a little beer to have, just to make this a bit easier, to make this a bit more fun. This is my one video this September, and it's a little short, and there's a reason for that, which is that September is an awful month. It's a bastard month, and I fucking hate it. I hate it, but there's nothing a nice beer can't cure. Cheers, everyone. I was scrolling my timeline on Blue Sky because I have nothing better to do, apparently. But while I was doing this, I saw an interesting clip of Green Party leader Zach Polanski on Good Morning Britain with Penny Mordaunt talking about Donald Trump in the context of his visit to the UK, and Penny Mordaunt hit Zach Polanski with this line.
Thing is, Zach, you're now the leader of a political party. You're not the president of a student union.
Setting aside how you feel about Zach Polanski and Penny Mordaunt or the issue of Donald Trump, this is a genre of attack that anyone remotely left of center will have encountered. The accusation that instead of sensible, serious politics, you're engaging in student politics because you've decided to hold positions that a substantial portion of the British public agree with. I found this particular incident to be an opportunity because I've always found this line of attack interesting, because where does this come from? It's odd, isn't it, to just say things like, you're not the president of the students' union, or that's student politics, and to just sit there as if you've made some devastating point that has dismantled your opponent, because you haven't. At least not in a meaningful way, yet Penny Mordaunt's sign-off makes it seem like she thinks she's won despite Zach Polanski carrying on, rightly so. Understanding this line of attack, where it comes from, how it works, is going to become more important as time goes on, especially if Zach Polanski continues to get on national TV, because you're going to be hearing it a lot more, tell you that, and if the Greens actually gain traction, which they might. This isn't the video where I do that speculation, but honestly, the fact that he's trying to actually do some politics and is getting shut down like this are connected. It's why this line of attack can come from both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, two sides of the same upheaval in our politics, with both parties suffering a collapse in their support in the last and current parliament, caused mostly by the fact that they've pursued exactly the same policy platform. The policies of austerity, supporting genocide, demonizing immigrants, and failing to directly confront the rise of the far right, all while presiding over declining living standards and a sense that nothing works. It turns out that's not popular, which, yeah, and apparently that doesn't matter. And apparently it doesn't matter which party's in charge for that. Who knew? Who could have said? So if the origin of this attack line can come from either of the two traditional parties, Reform do seem to use it more sparingly, if at all. I've not really found them using it, which makes sense given the fact that Reform are targeting university campuses pretty hard, which is a very American style of going about it, if you ask me, but whatever. What I want to figure out is, where does all of this come from? How does all of it work? Can we beat the trap? Let's figure it out. In order to answer that question, I need to paint for you the character of the student politician. Now, if you went to university, which I'm going to guess a significant portion of the audience has at some point, you probably know or have heard about this guy. And I have some bad news. If you can't remember a guy like this, you were probably that guy. Not me, though. I was much more the, I promise I won't get all political, 3 drinks later sort of person, because I was that cool, Actual student politicians, like the ones who gave a shit about NUS stuff or ran for your student union positions, could come from a wide variety of political positions. A quite common person who runs in these things is basically your typical nihilist shitposter type, who's really just kind of a right-wing dickhead once you actually scratch the surface, but hides it under layers of irony. That type of guy. I only mention this because we did have one of those at my uni, and he did very badly. But most commonly, people associate student politics and student politicians with the left. for reasons we'll get into in a bit, but the more troublesome aspect is the impression most of us have about that guy, right? The impression I have, and I think it's an impression a lot of people would identify with, is that student politics is characterized by how low stakes it is and by how vicious the people involved seem to be, which is a combination that may as well be writing promotional material for how to make a bad impression on people. A lot of this happens in the background of a person's typical experience as a student too. So when it intrudes, it feels like just an intrusion. It's awful. Everyone disliked that. Because none of it seems to matter in any real way, and a lot of what goes on at your local students' union does just seem like posturing about nothing in order to win rhetorical victories. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily true 100% of the time, or that there aren't important things that can be done, but just that that's the impression I had. Mostly because I was spending my time at uni practicing how to be a middling pool player, which I guess I'll find a picture of at some point, but that's just how I choose to spend my time. So the character of the student politician who does student politics is not someone who you would want to do anything remotely serious with, since they're not equipped to, and because they're perceived as young or insulated from the real world, which, feels a bit like people have been playing too much of The Sims, because they think uni is some separate realm from the real world. But okay, a person characterized like that is probably not going to be great at national politics. Which does make the backgrounds of some MPs really, really, really funny, especially some MPs in the current government. Which does handily bring me to where I think this character's longevity in the minds of certain politicians comes from. Which again, I find odd, because who really remembers that guy from uni unless you're talking to friends from uni or telling a story? They shouldn't occupy such a large portion of your mind that you launch into it every time you hear about someone wanting to tax the rich or someone wanting to criticize Donald Trump. Which are all things, by the way, that are considered out of bounds and illegitimate in British politics today, which perhaps feeds into this idea that it's all a rhetorical game over low stakes to make you feel better about yourself. Because if you can't do anything, what the fuck are the stakes, right? I did a video a while ago about the current health secretary and haunted doll, Wes Streeting, where for a significant part of that video I talked about his book. Now, I'd returned that copy of the book to the library, which, yeah, I got it from the library because I'm a massive nerd. Obviously, I have a library card. So if you want a detailed analysis, you've got to go to that video. And what I'm about to say is recollection based on some notes I had lying around. That being said, Wes Streeting apparently goes on and on about his time in student politics. Part of that is because it's an autobiography that goes up to age 31 or so, and as someone, in that age range, let's not talk too much about it, yeah, like that is a big chunk of your life. But the other part is that he just took a lot of what went on personally. I really think that's what this boils down to, at least in terms of the politicians and journalists who deploy this line of attack. They'll have had a similar experience to Wes Streeting, where this was clearly the last time they had to seriously face left-leaning arguments on something where there was anything like a level playing field. And more often than not, they lost, or at least had to disguise their more right-wing instincts. Mainly because the issues that students face, and I'll just list some off, just some that I had to deal with, some that my friends had to deal with, like insufficient financial support, bad landlords, unscrupulous employers, low-quality housing, those kinds of things. They're traditionally issues that left-of-center politics actually addresses. So anyone who's bothered tends to lean that way, which can be a challenge if you're using student politics as a rung of the career ladder, which is a lot of where the viciousness actually comes from. This isn't about the low stakes, even if you can't deny that it has that character. It's about people who want to do something there and then versus people who want to parlay their time in student politics into a career, usually in the Labour Party, but not exclusively. Really, the place this comes from And what this is trying to exploit is a disdain for the young. And if we're being honest about it, children. There's a good Leftist Cooks video about that, which I really like, especially around the people who tell you, they tell you to grow up. They tell you to grow up, right? Like, even though you're clearly a fucking adult, which we will come to because this is an aspect of it that frustrates me personally. There's an impression of young people generally as inexperienced, impulsive, and kind of incapable of articulating solutions to the problems they face, which is ridiculous. Does that cover some young people? Sure. But I would argue that some part of that covers the 60-something-year-old Prime Minister who said this in an interview after a by-election defeat.
Sorry,
Changing
Sakir,
the things
what is
that
that
need
vision?
changing.
What
And
is that
that is the
vision?
change that I will bring about.
There isn't an age limit or a political position where this doesn't at least apply to someone, and one might look at the state of the country, at the way our politicians who are supposed to be the grown-ups in the room have handled things, and wonder, why shouldn't we try something a bit different? All the evidence points to whatever this is not really working. Basically, if it's student politics to want things to get better and to hold principles, then maybe that's a line of attack that's not really viable as things keep getting worse. It is still interesting to see who this gets directed at. Of course, it gets directed at the mythical 18 to 24-year-old with green hair, who's often not directly in the conversation with the person attacking them. And I have to be honest, when I see this, I kind of go, well done, he's 13. Like that Michael Owen clip that I'm going to obviously throw in here.
Well done, he's 13.
Like, it's not some massive achievement to burn a straw man. And in some cases, these people lose to the straw man, which I would personally find very embarrassing. Then you see it directed at people like Zach Polanski, a man, I'm sorry if Zach Polanski is watching this, a man comfortably in his 40s. And I'm not being mean about it, I promise you. He is literally in his 40s. And I do hate to be like that about it, but most of this is directed towards people who are adults. And even if you just target it on students, they are also adults. And it's how you know this isn't about anything of substance, but about tiring someone. Or because you have an impression of a character who in all likelihood is closer to home than you might think. Why does this line of attack work? It's effective for a handful of reasons. First, and probably most important, is that there's what I call a media force multiplier. If most of the media, or even a significant proportion of the media, just agrees with your framing, then that's a big boost to your attack line. And a lot of our media and our politicians have similar backgrounds, both in terms of their class background, but in terms of what school they went to and what university they went to. So they largely fall into similar patterns of belief and behavior, and this is one of them. In large part because they'll have gone through the same things we talked about before. The last time they actually confronted someone who thought the world could be better was at university. And yeah, wow, fuck that guy, right? Fuck whoever that guy was who pissed them off, right? Plus, they all agree that these things aren't in play for politics, so to bring them up is to merely confirm in their minds that you're just engaging in low-stakes viciousness. That's why they seem to take it so personally. Even if you're unfailingly polite or speak in the exact same way they do, the other way this is effective is because there are just lower expectations now. A lot of people simply do not expect anything to work or expect anything to get better. So if you offer it to people, they kind of see you as a joke already, and throw in a comparison to a uni-educated twat, and you've made the perfect cocktail for never getting taken seriously. This feeds back into the idea that some things are just out of bounds for politicians now. This area has been getting bigger and bigger, and I think one of the consequences has been this incipient collapse in the two traditional parties' vote shares. Regardless, for a section of the public, they just don't expect anything and are suspicious of anyone offering it. The final way I think this is effective is it plays on a sense that certain people have, usually older and ironically usually quite well educated people, which is that they're being spoken down to by university educated people. Now, in some cases, I don't think this is wholly unjustified. There is a bit of a communication issue where some people struggle to communicate on the level with people. It's a skill and you do have to practice it, and I promise you it gets better if you practice it. If you're in the persuasion business, you have to practice it. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but largely this is not a real problem so much as an impression that's been built up by the media outlets people consume from. It's also an impression that's fed by the fact that governments in this country and parliament draw disproportionately from privately educated and university educated people, and if they're the ones ruining the place, well, you might have a poor opinion of the dregs who have the appearance of not quite making it, or people who seem like they're trying to claw their way up into it. That is to say, it works because an image has been successfully constructed for years in multiple intersecting ways that means the student politician can be almost anyone. Which makes it very fucking annoying, actually. So how can you beat this trap? Well, the first thing I want to say is that the easiest thing to do for your peace of mind is to simply accept this and what I'm about to say. And I'm saying this with love. But people who are primed to be persuaded by calling you, someone or something you support student politics, are probably looking for an excuse to dismiss you and shouldn't be your immediate priority for persuasion. I'm not saying write people off. I'm not saying that those people don't matter. But what I'm saying is work smarter, not harder. There are plenty of people who might be receptive, and focusing on them first will make this kind of person easier to bring on side later. Now, I know that's kind of like blasphemous because people seem to think you can't just tell portions of the electorate to fuck off, but trust me, you can, and you probably should in this case. In terms of actual things you can do, I have two things really to say. The first is just do some fucking politics. It's really that simple. If you speak to people's concerns and needs, if you speak seriously, even about things that are considered out of bounds, the rhetorical effectiveness of just saying you're doing student politics, it doesn't work as well over time, especially when you consider how low stakes and pointless a lot of our national politics is feeling at the moment. The second and final thing I would say is just laugh at these people, you know? Like, I would say it's a sign of immaturity, low stakes, and viciousness to just bury your head in the sand about wealth inequality, you know, Atlanticism and our commitment to it in the context of Donald Trump being president, and just all sorts of issues that we never really talk about, but we probably should. When someone's attack line relies on you being low stakes, raise the stakes and point out what stone cold losers a lot of these people are. In the spirit of the title of this video, as long as you're not on national TV, which I don't know that there's a great risk of anyone watching this ending up there, but just in case, you know, don't say this part to them. But for everyone else, you should tell people who say these kinds of things to shut the fuck up. And that's the video. I'm done. That's the last politics video. It's over. No more politics until Keir Starmer resigns. Okay, with that, everyone, I want to thank Malto, who made the image of me slapping that guy that's going to be in the thumbnail. And I want to thank my proofreader, who gave me precisely one note on the script. And it was probably the most cursed note I've ever got on a script before. I want to say that if you've made it this far and you've enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Like, YouTube's doing some weird things with the views. I'm kind of curious how this will do. So please do just like boost the video where possible. It is really appreciated. I also want to thank the patrons and members. If you want early access to the videos, if you want to vote on the topics of the videos, suggest topics, just generally be involved in the whole thing and be informed and just sort of support me and the channel, the Patreon and the YouTube membership programs are where you should go. Links will be in the description. And I need to shout out the top tier patrons: Drone Riff, Mercutio, Kersey Scheider, John N, Liron, Jar Jar, Muba, and Carolyn. Absolute legends. Thank you so much for sticking with me, as well as our YouTube members: Nadia Jiwa, Katie Marshall, Roger Zugi, Scaly Bubble, Ben Johnson. Thank you to them. As some of you will have caught at the end there, this is the last politics video until Keir Starmer resigns. And this is part of the thing. I just couldn't do the politics videos anymore. I'm really doing this one because the opportunity came to talk about it, and I just wanted to get something out about this for a while. So that's where this video has come from. But thank you so much for sticking with me. We're just going to do lighter stuff for the rest of the year, at least. We're just going to do some fun, media stuff, cool, chill, have a good time, you know? And with that, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I will catch you all on the next one. I am back. September, the bastard month is over. And I feel like we can make stuff again. I can make stuff again. I feel like it. I feel it coming back. And with that, everyone, I'll catch you all on the next video. Peace.